Issa Amro will be speaking in Hartford, Connecticut on Thursday, April 10th.
In the hospital where we operated on every day for one whole week, every one of my patients are civilians. None of them were Hezbollah fighters.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. A high concentration about Palestine this week on the program, featuring more of the talk of Dr. Swee Ang. Issa Amro will be speaking in Hartford, Connecticut on Thursday, April 10th. This Palestinian activist received the Right Livelihood Award in 2024 and has been nominated this year for the Nobel Peace Prize. He spoke recently over Zoom. We'll show a very short clip.
The situation is really hard on the people. We are facing real transfer. In the past, Israel was working hard to transfer us but not with a visible means. But after October 7th, they used the opportunity, they used the momentum to get rid of the families from certain areas, especially Area C, H2 in Hebron, Jordan Valley, Masafer Yatta. So they want to get rid of the people from there, and they are working very hard. So I focused with other activists in my group to keep the families in their homes, to try to make it easier for them, and to speak loud about what's going on to us from the occupation.
For details about Amro and the event, go to our website, thestrugglevideo.org. Now for some very grim reports. There's a video that has gone viral. It shows a huge bomb going off in Gaza, and you can actually see 2 or 3 people being flung 100 or 200 feet into the air and to their deaths. I'm not going to show you the video. It's war porn, I guess, the way that we are reacting to all these atrocities, horrors. Every day, 75, 80, 100, 120 people are killed in Gaza, and it's not the top story on corporate news. And for 5 or 6 weeks now, no food or supplies are being allowed into Gaza. Palestinians are being starved to death. This is actually a worse situation than a year ago. Then Biden pretended to care about civilians and some food trucks got in. Now, nothing. A different atrocity. 15 Palestinian medical workers and first responders were abducted, murdered, and bulldozed into a common grave. Kenneth Roth, who was the former executive director of Human Rights Watch, writes, "A survivor from a massacre of Palestinian paramedics and rescue workers in Gaza has said he saw Israeli troops open fire on a succession of Red Crescent ambulances and rescue vehicles and then use a bulldozer to bury the wreckage in a pit." Here's a fine dressing down of the foreign minister of the European Union.
High Representative, you're the Minister of Foreign Affairs a little bit of the European Union. You know that the International Criminal Court asked for the arrest of Israeli leaders, yet you go to Israel and your first words are...
We are very good partners.
What very good partners? In crime? In genocide? In ethnic cleansing? These words are a shame for the European Union. They should never be uttered again.
A protest on the sidewalk outside Columbia University.
kill teaching and learning. They kill research. They kill knowledge. They kill truth. And they kill people.
We must stand up for diversity. We must stand up for self-governance. And we must stand up for science.
For 30 years, I've studied autocracy around the globe and seen how leaders in Hungary, Turkey, and China have targeted higher education. For 10 years, I ran a research center in Moscow that was ultimately closed down on political grounds. Why do autocrats fear higher education? Why are they so hostile to the free expression of ideas? Well, universities are threatening to autocrats because we teach independent and critical thinking, because we train our students to scrutinize evidence and demand rigor, and because we teach students to be skeptical of authority, especially our own authority.
We know that this has nothing to do with opposing anti-Semitism. We know that this is about control.
Every fascist state will fall. Long live control. We are not control. You must stop fighting.
Making these changes would allow an overbearing government to bully our university. They open the door to political influence over who we teach, what we teach, how we teach, and even who is teaching.
Defend our research. Defend our research. Defend our teaching. Defend our teaching. Defend our students. Defend our students.
Now more of the talk by Dr. Swee Ang at the Palestine Museum US. Dr. Swee is a Malaysian. She trained as a doctor and surgeon in Singapore. In the 80s and 90s, she was a trauma and orthopedic consultant in the refugee camps in Lebanon. She was witness to the Sabra Shatila massacre in 1982 and has continued her work for Palestinians and Lebanese for more than 40 years. She is a human rights hero. In the segment we showed last week, she was explaining how in 1982, she, who was then a Christian Zionist and supporter of Israel, who knew very little about Palestinians, nevertheless went to Beirut, Lebanon, to treat the wounded.
We arrived in mid-August. In fact, we are mid-August, but we were not able to get into Beirut, which was the capital of Lebanon, because the Israelis were conducting a 36-hour continuous air raid. So we have to land in Cyprus and make our journey by sea into Lebanon, where there was a ceasefire for a free trade. So we went to Beirut, and for the first time after crossing the Green Line, we saw the buildings which we saw on television, this time life-size, three-dimensional, with lots of debris and rubble, and exactly like what the television shows. So I think we're managing now.
I'm going to use this.
Okay, no, I didn't touch anything.
These two buttons.
Okay, right, only up and down. No? If I touch anything and wave my hands, you go blank.
I'll explain to you what happened.
Yes. Okay, so sometimes you wonder why, with enough trouble in our own countries, some of us get fixated elsewhere. But I put this up to remind myself that we are not alone. You know, we belong to the world, and the world also belongs to us. And we suffer together, and we prosper together. And we can only be free if others are free. So if I carry on about what happened in Lebanon and miles away, forgive me, because I see that as part of myself, okay? So that's my hospital, 900 years old. Okay, for a country like USA, 900 years is a long time. And I also cannot understand why they took 900 years to appoint a woman orthopedic surgeon. and also one that's not white. Okay, a woman that's under 5 foot, but that's it. So I will start from what's happening now. A lot of us are very troubled with 7 October, right? It's called the Al-Aqsa flood operation, when on the 7th of October, a group of Gaza fighters went in to take hostages in the kibbutz of Israel. So we're initially shocked and disturbed, but we are even more shocked and completely devastated as on the 8th of October, airplanes flew in and the bombing of Gaza began. We are talking about, 200 pounds bombs, devastating and beginning of displacing people, asking them to leave northern Gaza to go to the south. And the tally of death, which I pulled out last week, 25th of February, about nearly 16 months into the 8th of October, you know that 48,000 more were killed. So these are people whose bodies can be identified. But what cannot be identified is how many more were buried under the rubble, and maybe already bodies are decayed. So all in all, it could be 60,000 that were killed. And then even now with the ceasefire, a lot of them are still starving. They're suffering from diseases, homeless. So even without the bombs falling, even without the drones killing, people are still dying. So either they die of disease, of starvation, or hunger, or they were directly killed by bombs. So the number of families that were completely wiped out, injuries, and 12,000 were so badly injured that they had to be evacuated, but yet not evacuated. And the hostages, how many of them still alive, you can only speculate. And the people that were rendered homeless in Gaza, the population of people in Gaza, according to the UN, before the 7th of October, i.e. 6th of October, is 2.3 million. As of now, they reckon that it's probably 2.2 million. And 2.1 million of them are homeless because their homes are completely destroyed, or they're forced to leave their home, what they call forced displacement into South Gaza, which is said to be a safe area, but as you know, it's not safe at all. And the worst thing are the children with no parents and no families, 35,000 of them. And what hurts me more is the medical personnel killed. This means doctors, nurses, and so on. And of course, this is a terrible violation of the Geneva Convention. Hospitals, medical staff are supposed to be protected so that they can save lives. Didn't happen. United Nations killed. Okay? Journalists also killed. Mass grave being uncovered, and ever since the ceasefire of the 19th of January, nearly 700 bodies were recovered from the rubble. And of the hospitals in Gaza, which is 36, most of them are damaged. 35 of them are very badly damaged, and one of them is completely gone. So this was published by the UN on the 3rd of July. That's last year. Okay, 17,000 children with no surviving family, and the number of children missing. So we're not quite sure they were missing because they were hiding somewhere or they are under the rubble. We don't know. But the actual number confirmed that as of July, that was many, many months ago, was 16,000. Now it's a lot more. And the Lancet, which is a very prestigious medical journal, reckon that by the time they flew, maybe 186,000 people would have been killed or died of diseases. And with all that, you find that we have forgotten to address what's going on in West Bank. So these are the figures of West Bank from last week: 1,000 killed, 40,000 homeless, and a number of injured. So it is actually a disastrous situation. Then we talk about the ceasefire of the 19th of January, when it was a temporary kind of relief, but there are very few of us who actually thought that it can last. We don't know. Okay? But what really moved me, you know, and like many of you, I cry every day because of Gaza. But when I saw the people displaced to southern Gaza, walking over rubble, carrying their belongings, nearly 500,000 on the first day of the ceasefire, walking north towards northern Gaza, over broken roads and rubble, to live in northern Gaza in worse ruins and rubble, which even President Trump called a demolition site. So, that's them. Anybody with any sense will ask one simple question. If northern Gaza was so badly destroyed, what made the Palestinians, who have already suffered 15 months of genocide with everything destroyed, go back to their homes were completely destroyed? Why do they return to ashes and rubble? Is that something we have to understand about the Palestinian psyche? You know, it looks as though they have just been to a genocide. Now they go to live in a demolition site, and then they might face deportation and ethnic cleansing, and they won't go. So that alone, you don't have to read history books, will make us ask a question: is there something we are missing? Yeah. After walking 6 hours on rubble from the southern half of Gaza, below the Gaza Valley, towards Gaza, they returned to North Gaza, to what's left of their home. Yeah, these figures are dated. Just, you know, just a status report in March last year about how many buildings were destroyed and so on. This is old. Okay, I want to show you this. This is Khan Yunis, second largest city in Gaza. And you can see how crowded it is and how many people live in it. I took this picture from a hospital, higher floors, in 2009. So if you drop a 2,000-ton bomb into this lot, you know, how many people can you kill? And you keep bombing, and you reduce in a state like that. And then they said, fine, I finished with my job, you can return to your homes. So they return to this kind of home. And yet they return. And they return to identify the bodies of their families who were killed. It's under this kind of background that we learned about South Africa filing a complaint, an application on the 29th of December, just about 10 weeks following the 7th of October, saying that Israel is committing plausible genocide. It's a technical term because genocide usually is judged in retrospect. If you haven't killed everybody, then you might not fulfill the criteria of proven genocide. But under the Convention of Prevention, the main thing is to prevent, and not to let everybody die and then say, there you are, I told you it's a genocide. No, you prevent it, okay? Yeah, so they have interim ruling on the 26th of how to prevent further killing in Gaza. So this is what happened. Prevent genocidal act, stop incitement of genocide, lift the blockade so there's food and water and electricity. And then, also very important, do not destroy the evidence of genocide. Because if you knew that a whole building has been bombed and 300 people live in the building, so you can expect people being bombed alive and buried. You do not bulldoze it and clean up the whole place before the bodies are evacuated. But that was being done in parts of Gaza. And then the court will evaluate and allow food and water to go in, because you do not starve people to death. You do not create drought. And that's a terrible way of killing people. But yet the following day, there was a call to defund UNRWA. And UNRWA, as you know, and this is very basic for people who know a lot, okay? United Nations, War Relief Agency was created by the General Assembly in 1949 to look after the refugees of 48 Palestine. Because initially it was whether they return home, they not return home, when it was clear that of the 800,000 that were evicted from Palestine, they are not going home. So UNRWA was set up to look after them, and they feed them with war rations. They build tents, and the tents become shanty towns, and they vaccinate children, basic education, and kind of public health education, and that's what they do. In fact, 6 million Palestinian refugees around the world, especially around the Middle East, were looked after by UNRWA. Without United Nations, that particular branch of UNRWA, the 6 million Palestinian refugees wouldn't have survived. And it's still going on. Of course, in Gaza alone, UNRWA employs 13,000 employees. And 2 of them were actually confirmed with participated in the 7th of October. But even if the allegation was 13 were actually guilty or not proven, out of 13,000, you cannot defund UNRWA collectively punishing the 6 million Palestinian refugees, depriving them of food, water, healthcare, and sanitation. You can't do that. It's a collective punishment. So, and you know all about the continuing things and so on, but I also want to share with you my recent experience in Lebanon, because as you know in the introduction, I'm a survivor of the Sabra Shatila massacre in 1982. And that was what changed me from a Zionist Christian into a friend of the Palestinian people. So every year, I will go on the anniversary of the massacre to visit the survivors of the camp and be with the family. And people say, what do you do there? Do you operate? No. The main mission of that is to go as a friend, to remind the people who have been so badly traumatized and hurt and losing so many families that some of us did not forget, and we will come back at least once a year to be with them, to remind them that we have not forgotten. So last year on the 17th of September, when I was stepping off the plane to the anniversary, I was redirected to the American University Hospital of Beirut. The reason being that 4,000 civil defense, ambulance drivers, firemen, hospital porters, some doctors, medical workers, have their pagers exploded in their hands. So that is the pager attack. It was touted by the arms industry that it was such a wonderful thing because it's target specific. It actually blows up in the hands and faces of those whom it is designed for. So there's no collateral damage, as though because you are harmed or wounded by pager, you are guilty. So I'm going to tell you, in the hospital where we operated on every day for one whole week, every one of my patients are civilians. None of them were Hezbollah fighters. And the attack was especially horrible because imagine if you hear your pager ring, you bring it up just to see who is wanting you, maybe it's a hospital, maybe, or whatever it is, and it just explodes in your hand. The hands are blown up like that. If you held it near to the face, it blew up the eyes. So many of my patients are at least blind in one eye and also suffer this kind of hand injury. And if you look at this hand, half the thumb is gone, and you can't see any viable fingers. So, after struggling, this is just one of them. After struggling for, I think, 2 hours, we managed to salvage 2 fingers, the little and ring fingers, and managed to cover his thumb.
More of Dr. Swee next week, but we have to mention this April 4th tweet by Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta. He writes, "The British Medical Association has sunk to new depths of moral cowardice and genocide enablement. It canceled a talk by the founder of Medical Aid for Palestine, Dr. Swee Ang, at its annual Medical Students Conference. God forbid they become inspired to spend their career in the service of humanity as opposed to serving power." That's our program for today. See you next week. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.